This is Courtnee Fallon Rex. I am blabbing for the first time live from the Bosque. I'm really excited. So I'll talk a little bit more about the Bosque, since this is where I'm at. I'll talk about my experience discovering it and how I ended up coming here. So I first learned about the Bosque, I'd say about 3 years ago. This person that I'm pretty sure I had never met, but who had a lot of mutual friends in Seattle, friended me on Facebook. I was like, who's this Brian Fay guy? And I noticed that he lived in Mexico, and that was already kind of like, how do you know all these people in like the tech industry in Seattle and you live in Mexico? So that piqued my curiosity. And I discovered he had a YouTube channel, and I watched a couple of the Bosque videos on the YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube and do a search for the Bosque Village, you will find the Bosque's YouTube channel, which has a lot of footage of Brian talking about how he thinks about the world. And I really liked it. I really liked that he didn't come across with this over-sugared, flowery, really censored kind of approach to talking about what he was seeing and feeling. I relate to that, and it's really fun. It's been very fun to experience that in person with him too. I appreciated that he was one of the very, very few people who was actually walking the walk. Not just living in their 4-bedroom house in Seattle talking about how they want to throw solar panels on the roof to continue living to the degree and the excess that they're still living, but he just up and left and ended up in this forest in a country whose language he didn't speak, without any electricity or running water. And I was just incredibly, incredibly impressed with his willingness to do that, and also the fact that he didn't die out here, which I thought was really great. And so I developed an affinity for him pretty much immediately just watching his videos. And I was like, I really like what this guy's doing. And, 3 years ago, I wasn't even remotely ready to come out here and meet him or do any of this stuff. But it got some gears going. And I think that discovering Brian's videos and his project here, which is incredibly unique, I've heard of a lot of intentional communities. I've heard of a lot of sustainability projects, but he's doing it in a really unique way. I haven't yet discovered another place that is doing it like Brian is. And so that, for me, discovering this place, I think was one of the pivotal experiences where I really, really started thinking about how I was living. Before then, it had been kind of this procrastinating monkey on my back that I noticed and I really didn't like about myself, but didn't do anything about, right? Like, oh, it's so disgusting how much energy gets used making this plastic spoon that I'm using and throwing away anyway. A little bit before, quite a bit before I met Brian, actually, I had started experimenting at least a little bit with the amount of waste that I created. I think it was 2009. I kept all of my recyclable trash in my living space for 2 months. I piled it on a shelf so that I had a visual representation of the amount of waste that I was creating. And that is written up at blog.navita.net, which I have just posted for you guys. You can search for the Waste Project. There is also, under diary posts, there is a tag called experiments. And that is where I post about like my personal experiments. Just, hey, can I go a month without complaining? Hey, I went 2 months collecting my trash. This is what happened. That's where I blog about stuff like that. And actually seeing the amount of trash that fancying myself as somebody who was, conscious already of waste and recycling and everything, was a big eye opener and changed the way that I did things. And so that little spark in me that was doing little experiments like that really, really gravitated and connected with what Brian was doing. So I kept tabs on him, like a lot of you guys do, I think. And as my life and path developed, couple years after I saw his videos, I went ahead and messaged him on Facebook and said something to the effect of, I really like what you're doing out there. I'd like to visit you someday. And there was a, oh yeah, cool. That sounds great. Let me know when you're ready and I'll let you know if that makes sense. And so basically fast forward some more YouTube stalking and a couple of years, and I was finishing up my tenure at Camp Half-Blood in Austin, which I talked about earlier in this video. If you missed it, I'm recording this and I will be posting this on my YouTube. So if you want to hear about Camp Half-Blood, you can go to my Patreon page, which I have posted in the comments, and read a post about it with lots of videos. It made a lot of sense to contact Brian and see, where are you at? What are you looking for? What do you need? And so it just worked out that Brian is preparing this space for more interaction, more people wanting to host events and do things. And I have some of the skills that can support him in doing that. So I'm here. And while I'm here, I'm having a lot of internal shifting, lots of thinky-feely stuff going on, lots of great new experiences. I had been wanting to kill my own meat. That sounds terrible, but I've been wanting to kill my own meat for about a decade. And so I finally got to do that here. I'm very, very thankful to have had the opportunity to do that. And I'm glad that, it was the rooster's time. And I just happened to be here and was interested in killing something and eating it. That's another thing that, that's an example of what I write about for my $5 patrons. I write more in depth about what that process has been like for me to people at the $5 level than I do publicly or at the $1 level. Quora is one of those websites that I recognize as being useful and pretty cool. They've got a nice community there. Brian is more involved in that community than I am by far. He has answered tons of awesome questions about the Bosque over there. My favorite one to send people to is, what is the Bosque? And you can follow him there and see some of the other things. And he talks a bit about the food philosophy, which I think I tried to talk about, but probably got sidetracked, and a bunch of other cool things. If you think you might want to come visit the Bosque, I'll send you to the website. Please know that we receive hundreds of requests, and we go through a process where every single person needs to fill out an application. I filled out an application, which means you will fill out an application in order to be considered. The Bosque is just like life and nature and everything else is very dramatic. It's constantly changing. The things that we need here and the things that we don't need here often shift and move around. And just because it's not the time one time doesn't necessarily mean that it won't be a time another time. So just know that, I guess. One of the things that I wanted to talk about was like the most interesting and the most challenging things about being at the Bosque, since this is where I'm at and it's probably what you guys want to hear about the most. My favorite thing is actually not having internet all the time, weirdly enough. I find that with the internet turned off in evenings, I have time to do interesting things and learn stuff. Right now I'm learning Spanish, which I think is going to be one of the most long-term beneficial things that I will have done here. And I don't think that I would be doing it as well if I didn't have time to just sit and write Spanish as I'm listening to the audio of how to learn Spanish. I think the writing is really a big part of how I'm learning. I'm also using an online program called Fluencia, and that's really fun, and it's a good way to learn new words. But as far as practicing and actually being able to incorporate the language in a way that is useful and effective in communicating with other people, I think actually not having the internet is really helpful for that. One of the most challenging things for me, being someone who is very much a leader and very much a person that is generally in charge of their own shit. And, you know, I'm off living in a van by myself and I love it. And I decide where I go and what I do. It's been very interesting to be working with somebody who has a very clear vision of what they want to be doing and a very clear way about how they want to go about doing it. So that's been a lot of fun. We've had a lot of fun conversations and interesting conflicts in order to accomplish those things. And I think it's been a great learning experience for me to be doing that. My favorite place at the Bosque is actually where I am right now, because I have this really interesting relationship with going to the bathroom. It's kind of my meditation. It's how I release what no longer serves me. And I am actually doing this blab from one of the composting toilets. And it's pretty cool. See? Ta-da! I'm not actually, just so you know, I'm not actually on the toilet, but I am using it as a little studio right here. It's in a perfect space where I can get internet, and I really like the background and all that. Another aspect of being at the Bosque that I personally really like is the arts and music aspect. When you think about going to a permacultural experiment that's designed around figuring out how to live as a human without destroying your environment, a lot of people don't automatically link to art, but it's very much a very core aspect of what's happening here at the Bosque. And Brian Fay, who is the founder of this place, is himself an artist and painter. And so for that, it's actually been very fueling for me. I love being out in nature. Every single day is beautiful here. The climate is just amazing in central Mexico. Even when it's raining, it's awesome. So the exploring that I've been able to do with art in different fashions has been great. I think I'm going to be learning how to carve wood. I've never done that here. I've never done that before, but I think I'm going to do that here. I've been making watercolors in the evenings. It's been awesome. And I also had the experience for the very first time of killing a land mammal for meat, which was really intense and wonderful and a very good thing for me to do in order to become really connected with what it actually takes to eat meat. Those things die. And I really wanted to be a part of that process. So I killed a rooster and I processed a rooster and I stuck my hand in his little body and pulled his guts out and all that awesome stuff, which was really disgusting. And part of that experience is actually figuring out what artistically I'd like to do with the feathers. At first I was thinking I was going to make one of those feather collars that has feathers coming up from both sides. Now that I'm sorting and spending some time with the material, I'm not sure if that's what I'm going to do. But it's been very interesting to really sit with what art is and how art expands well beyond what most people consider art to be. And I often look at the way that I am cultivating my living experience as something artistic, but it's kind of strange to try and express to other people that, like, hey, me living in a van and traveling around is art in some way. But it is. And the amount of effort and the amount of change and transformation and personal improvement and all of the things that went into being able to successfully do this, even just to be successfully alone and not emotionally falling apart like I would have a few years ago, has been an art in and of itself as well. So life imitates art, blah, blah, blah. You've heard all of that before. I'm incredibly impressed at how little scent, how little fuss there is. Going to the bathroom here, it's great. Another thing that's really interesting that I also had done a lot of conservation work and a lot of shifting around to be able to handle is showering. 10 years ago, I showered every day. I washed my hair every day. Sometimes I showered twice a day, actually. And now I shower once or twice a week. I wash my hair even less than that. It's fantastic. I love it. I'm healthier. My skin doesn't break out anymore. It's fabulous. I don't use a bunch of weird products with a bunch of crap in them. Microbeads are terrible, by the way. Please don't use them. They're awful for the environment. And yeah, there are other ways that you can sand your skin without microbeads. So at the Bosque, we have a spa day once a week. What that entails is sitting in a dry sauna until the outer skin has softened and it starts to kind of peel up, sort of like when you have a sunburn and then you go get a massage and your skin peels up. Kind of the same thing. So we relax in a sauna for a while until our skin starts slowing off, and then just rinse, rather than standing in a shower for 10 minutes with running water going that entire time. And I'm actually well suited for that. Part of what I had started doing in the shed, which did not have a shower, and then later when I moved into the van, was using very, very, very little water to shower. I have one of those sun shower bags. It's a 5-gallon bag. I can generally take 3 showers with 5 gallons of water. And it really is just a matter of turning it on, rinsing yourself off, turning it off, soaping up or doing whatever it is you're going to do, and then turning it on again to rinse. It's not as relaxing. Sometimes. I had a really amazing shower in the middle of Wyoming and BLM land that was just awesome because it was super hot that day. And so I wasn't cold, right? In the winter, I think showering like that is going to be a little more uncomfortable. But even that discomfort has its own rewards to it, which I've really enjoyed. So back to food, I think. I feel like I kind of went off the rails about the food. In the van, I eat a lot of raw stuff. I don't have refrigeration. For a while, I did have a cooler that I had to add ice to all the time, like $3 a bag for ice. I was reusing the water in my showers, but it really just didn't seem sustainable long term. One thing that I am really enjoying about being at the Bosque is that there is no refrigeration here. Part of the reason that really works is because this place is stationary and it's possible to do things like root cellars and things like that, which actually aren't here yet. But the climate is very mild and it works rather well for not having refrigeration. If I had tried to do that while I was in Texas, I think that would have been a little tougher living in the van. But part of what is really amazing about living the way that I'm living is that I can move toward the weather. So I do think that when I return to the States in November, I will be exploring that quite a bit. Like, how can I eat well and not get food poisoning and not have refrigeration for the most part. Another way that I avoid having to refrigerate a lot of things is I don't have a lot of animal products. The products that I do have, like eggs, I try really hard when I'm driving in the middle of nowhere to stop by an egg farm that doesn't wash their eggs so that my eggs will last without being refrigerated. In case you don't already know about that, commercial eggs are rinsed, and that is the only reason why they need to be refrigerated. Like places in Europe don't refrigerate their eggs, and they don't do that. They don't have to because the, goop, the natural ooze that is covering those eggs when they are laid is not rinsed off. And that hardens into a protective barrier, so you don't have to refrigerate to protect your eggs. Other than that, I don't tend to travel with meat. I don't even tend to travel with cheese, even though supposedly the stuff never goes bad. I don't really like foul-smelling or moldy cheeses. So I tend to limit that for when I eat out. Another thing that I've really been enjoying about this space is the amount of walking I've been doing. Lots of odd terrain walking, not a lot of like paved roads and pavement as far as trails go around here. So I'm finding that my body is actually adapting very, very well to that. I have read in the past that actually uneven terrain is better for your body when you're walking around. I had not personally experienced that living in the city, like walking on a sidewalk that's kind of sideways and everything always just sort of made me feel wonky. But I have been enjoying the amount of walking that's been happening here, especially with how beautiful it is in the forest and how wonderful the weather is in central Mexico. The nearest, largest sort of place that you would want to tour as a tourist is Ironga. It's a very cute, small town, really wonderful. The people are very friendly, and I've enjoyed my times going down there as well. The culture shock is pretty big since I don't speak very much Spanish yet. That's another thing that I'm consistently working on. I do a little bit of Spanish every day, sometimes not as much as I'd like to, but definitely a little bit every day. Part of why I am at the Bosque in the first place is actually to assist Brian in opening the place up to team members and visitors again. It's been pretty much closed down for the last few years. And now that the infrastructure and some of the construction has already started happening, there's a little bit more that needs to be done. But now that it's started happening, we're working on things like this, on blabs, broadcasting, taking video. I've been taking a lot of video since I've been here. How to broadcast the Bosque and to make it a little bit more of a stage, in addition to being a permacultural experiment where humans are learning how to adapt and use resources and use less in order to not destroy the environment that they are living in. So the ways that I am helping with that are planning and like process orientation stuff, kind of tester things. Brian and I are both very, very good at noticing things that are wrong with stuff. That's why we were such great testers. And so I've been pretty good with that. And generally you either love that about me or hate that about me. I've found there kind of really isn't much of an in-between. And a lot of people think they love that about me and then decide later that they don't. But it's been working out really well here, having two very critically thinking and pretty quick brains focusing on the same project and different elements of the project, figuring out exactly what steps need to be taken in order for people to apply and come here. We are looking for people who are comfortable both in front of and behind the camera. I've had some interesting experiences with that. I've been online for 20 years. I've been documenting my life for a very long time. I consider myself a very, very open person. I'll pretty much talk about just about anything, often to the discomfort of the people around me. And yet I am having some transitional experiences coming here and being on video all the time. I come from a background where I've been blogging, and I had one of the first webcams online in 1995. And I thought that I was used to being on the spot. But it's very, very different to go into a situation where somebody else is filming you and you're adapting in other ways too. Like, most people don't live like this all the time. So you'll come to the Bosque and you'll have that transitional period already, and it's all on video. So the idea of self-censorship, kind of important. Don't say things that you wouldn't want broadcast to the world and kept for posterity forever and ever. I had to learn that. I'm still learning that. And so when we talk about being comfortable in front of and behind the camera, we also talk about like your personal philosophy about being on camera. How do you want to be perceived? Who is it that you want to be on camera? And how does that apply to the mission of the Bosque, what it is that you're wanting to do here, and what it is that you're wanting to project in the world about your life and how you're living. We want people who have strong opinions and who have some experience potentially of thinking about sustainability and thinking about how they're going to conserve, and maybe have some examples of how they're doing it in their life. Like it's a really great experience to just go somewhere in order to learn, like as a complete newbie. But that's not really what we're looking for here. We're looking for people who are already on the path, who recognize the Bosque as something that, like, hey, they are doing what I've been doing in a different way or in a more extreme way or something like that, so that we attract people who will also contribute to this environment in a long-standing way. And I think that's about it. Thank you so much, all 14 of you who joined. Had 14 viewers. And this was really fun, sitting on the loo talking to myself. It's been pretty great. And I'll hopefully see you around Patreon. On my Patreon page, there's also a list of all the other social media sites. That's why I didn't post them here. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I'm on G+, all of that stuff too. So thanks a lot for being here, and we'll see you around.